Yeah, hey Courtney, how you doing today? Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, that's fine. That's excellent. How's your day been so far?
It's been interesting for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so go ahead and let the viewers know who you are, what you do, and why you do it, Courtney.
Sure. So my name is Courtney Boyer. I am a relationship and sexuality expert and author of the book Not Tonight, Honey, Why Women Actually Don't Want Sex and What We Can Do About It. And I help people solve their relationship and sex problems.
Okay,
Oh,
excellent.
and why do I do it? Why do I do it? Because I love helping people and I just feel really drawn to the field of relationships and sexuality.
Okay, okay. So what got you into that field? Like, what were the steps that led to that
Mm.
moment when you decided, okay, this is what I want to do?
Gosh, that's a great question. So I wanted to be a lawyer when I was a kid. I had no interest in working in the therapy or personal development world, definitely not the sexuality field. But I grew up really religiously, and a lot of the narrative around sex was it's bad, don't do it, but it's okay when you're married. And the older I got, the more I started to question that and really wanted to change the conversation around it. And then I read the book, The Women's Room, in college, and that just totally changed my life. And I was like, I want to help empower women and help them to be more connected with their bodies and their sexuality and really take control of their lives.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned women being in touch with their sexuality and things like that.
Mhm.
You know, for a lot of women that have been in a relationship that hasn't necessarily worked out, and
Mhm.
they've now come out of that relationship and they've now developed a sense of shame or guilt about the fact that their relationship didn't work out. And it kind of affects their sexuality going forward because it's like they need to give themselves permission to be expressive again.
Yeah.
What, in your opinion, are some steps they can take to start to express themselves once again after a failed relationship?
I think that one, it's important to grieve when you have a relationship that ended. I don't love using the word failed because I think that we have this pass or fail approach to relationships. If we stay together, we pass, and if it ends, we fail. And I think that some relationships really are only meant to be a certain amount of time. And so sometimes those complete, and that doesn't mean that they failed. So I would reframe how you look at the ending of a relationship. And then if you were the one that was, dumped, for lack of a better word,
Right.
giving yourself the time to grieve that and to really make peace and to reflect on, okay, what did I love about this relationship? What could I absolutely have done better? And what is it that is really, I'm noticing a pattern. So what I see with a lot of people is that they continue to attract similar relationships, similar circumstances because they have this limiting belief about themselves and about the world. And the universe keeps sending these opportunities to heal, but they don't. And so they just replay them over and over. So I
Right.
would get really self reflective and then figure out, okay, what are my next steps? Big next step is giving yourself permission, giving myself permission that I am worthy and deserving of pleasure, that I deserve to be happy and in a relationship that's healthy and full of joy. And a lot of women have a hard time with that step.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, you mentioned it's not necessarily a failure, but sometimes something come to an end of a cycle. So a lot of people they have this vision of like how something is supposed to be played out, how something's supposed to play
Mhm.
out, and when it doesn't necessarily feel like that, they feel like they failed. But you're right in terms of like some things. They just have their cycle and they just have their moment of experience and certain relationships. That's what happened. So what would you say about women that they are struggling with expressing their sexuality because of their professional life? So their work they've prioritized their work and they've
Mhm.
focused on that to the point that like it's affected their femininity and their sexual expression. How can they go about creating a balance between their work life and still being able to experience themselves as a feminine woman and be expressive?
Yeah, I think that that's a big struggle for a lot of women, especially in corporate America. This belief that like I have to be one of the guys and that the less authentic that I am, then the less accepted I'll be. And I honestly think that the opposite is true, that the more authentic we are, the more successful we are, and the more in tune we are with our desires, sexual and otherwise, then the more aligned we are with our purpose. And getting from that point to that point is really scary because it feels so overwhelming and like think of like, gosh, I need to go from this weight to this weight. Like, man, there's so many steps that I feel like I need to take, and there's so much that I have to risk to get there. But really, like that's why it's so important to work with a professional to help you, like, guide you and support you through that so that you're not doing it alone. Because when our brains think that we're doing like something really scary and we're doing it by ourselves, it wants to shut that down super fast because then it fears like, oh, we're going to be excommunicated, we're going to be alone, we're going to die alone, and that is the end of life.
Yeah, like a lot of people do feel like they are on their own in terms of like within the struggles within their relationships, but
Yeah.
they need to realize that there is help out there. But the problem is
Yeah.
they're afraid to ask
Yeah.
for that help. So yeah, it is important that people understand that there is no need to be afraid to ask for help if you feel like you need help. There's people that are willing to help you through your struggles. And speaking of struggles, like we've all had struggles in our previous relationships. Um,
Mhm.
and we all have learned something from those struggles that we've had in previous relationships. What would you say some of your struggles have been in your personal life in regards to relationships, and
Yeah.
how did you navigate through that to get to the place you are now?
Yeah, I would say trusting people. So my dad grew up really, really poor and very emotionally and physically abusive. And so from a very early age, he would tell me often, you can't trust anybody. Like you just can't trust anybody. And so that became such a deep belief in my mind. And so I always was like waiting for the person to disappoint me. I was always waiting to be betrayed or like have them not show up. And so what I was doing was like creating these situations and really not giving anybody grace and allowing them to just confirm for me that, see, yep, you can't trust people, they're bad. And so what I had to do is really work through that limiting
Right.
belief and really accept that, okay, like this is not doing me any favors to not trust other people. And so I can be discerning and I can realize that that's a part of life, that there are times where people will disappoint you and let you down, but that is not a reflection of who I am. And for a really long time, I linked those two together.
Right, right. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, like when we see issues that arise in our life and we're already programmed to think that, oh, this is
Mhm.
like supposed to be a disappointment in the first place, it's easy for us to paint everything with the same brush and kind of waiting for the disappointment. And in a way, we can start to attract certain things in our life by always focusing our attention and looking for that and magnifying it in our life. And in that sense, it's easy to miss areas in our life that are positive when we're always looking for the negative as well. So
Mhm.
I did want to ask you, like, we go out all the time and we see different people that we're attracted to, like,
Mhm.
but in the context of like human nature and the fact that we're attracted to different people, what is your viewpoint on monogamy versus non-monogamy?
Yeah. So I need to preface this with saying I am polyamorous, so that falls under non-monogamy.
Right.
So I feel like it's hard, even if you ask a monogamous person, yeah, it's you would get a biased answer. So I think that there are different relationship orientations. Like some people are born to be non-monogamous, and some are born to be monogamous, and some people choose those things. I think that all relationship orientations are valid as long as they are communicated, they are agreed upon, there is consent, there's open communication. Um, I, I, I think that there are so many benefits to being open-minded to different relationship orientations. I don't think there's a one size fits all approach to relationships. And that was something that I really found myself struggling with when I was early on in my sex therapy career, because I would have these couples come to me with such vast, sexual dynamics and differences. And the goal was to really have someone shrink and have someone suck it up so that they could try to meet each other. And it was always preserve the relationship, and never, gosh, how could we have these other needs met in a non-conventional, but also very authentic way?
Right. And for people that like are in a relationship, but they're thinking about non-monogamy, but they're not
Mhm.
too sure how they can express this to their partner without causing too much friction. Like, in what ways can they actually have that conversation with their partner about possibly venturing into non-monogamy without necessarily causing their partner to erupt, so to speak?
Yes, so I do want to share. So my husband's monogamous, and I was the one that proposed to open our marriage a few years ago, and it did not go well. It really just went poorly, and so I don't. I share that because it's easy. It's sometimes when you see polyamorous or non-monogamous or swinger couples, and they make it look so easy, right? They make, oh, we just had this conversation and it just evolved, and it was not the case for my husband and I. It was a real intentional struggle to figure out how we could create a relationship that worked for us. And we're celebrating 20 years of marriage in January, which I'm really, really proud of. And we've been the most in love and the most sexually active we've ever been with each other. So how do you bring that up? One of the ways I like bringing up hard, like controversial or sensitive topics. And this can be even if you're introducing like BDSM, or you want to have a threesome, or you like want to open your marriage completely, is using what's like a third party source. So saying, hey, I was listening to this podcast the other day and they were talking about blah, blah, blah. Gosh, like, what do you think about that? So
Right.
you're not saying, I want this. I think we should do this. You're not meeting my needs, or you're boring, or like I'm unfulfilled. What you're just introducing information in a non-threatening, neutral way to kind of get a gauge on what their perspective is.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, it's a very non-confrontational way of
Yes.
introducing something like that. So let's say something like that is introduced, but the
Mhm.
partner is still like, no, like that's
Mhm.
not what we're doing, type of thing. Like, the partner that does want to open up the relationship, what should they do in that kind of situation? Because they might start to feel trapped in terms of they want to experience certain things, but they don't necessarily want to upset their partner, but they don't
Yeah.
want to also trap themselves or like not be able to express themselves. What can they do in that kind of situation?
I think they have to get really clear and confident on why they want to open it. So why I think sometimes we think that this will be non-monogamy will be a band-aid to like a gaping wound in the relationship. That's what I thought it was in my marriage. I was like, oh, this is a great way to save it. This is a great way to fix it. And that was not the way to do it. And so I wasn't really clear on what I wanted it to look like, and that's okay. Really, and again, not to harp on working with a professional, but I think if you are able to work with a coach or a therapist who's experienced in this field about what the resistance is to introducing kink or introducing non-monogamy, and really getting down to what those fears are, because a lot of that resistance is fear-based. It's like, I'm afraid that they're going to leave me for somebody else. There's a lot of miseducation about what, the different types of non-monogamy. And so also getting a support system. So reaching out, following people on social media where you feel like, okay, this is how they did it, and like feeling inspired by them, and, like, okay, like these are the things that they considered and went through, and just trying to find what I call expanders, so people that you can relate to and you see yourself in, and see the opportunities of like, oh, well, if they could do it, I could do it too.
Mm, mm, mm. So, like, what if the situation came to some type of ultimatum where the partner was like, "Look, I hear what you're saying. I've given you my perspective. This is not what I want to do. It's either me or the lifestyle that you want to live." Like, how do you feel about that kind of ultimatum being brought up?
So I kind of did something like that with my husband, sort of, but it wasn't in that way. I had said, I can't live monogamously anymore. And I totally understand if that's a deal breaker for you, but it is something that I'm not willing to compromise. So in that, I never said, I'm going to leave you if you can't do X, Y, or Z. I was just saying, this is who I am. This is what I need. I absolutely understand if that doesn't work for you. It would break my heart. It would make me sad. But I know that you have to do what's right for you, and I need to do what's right for me.
Mm, mm. So essentially, coming from your own perspective and expressing yourself rather than asking them to do anything for you, so to speak. Yeah, yeah,
Yes. And that's something I say with, men I date is, hey, I'm never going to tell you that you can do X, Y, or Z. I'm just going to tell you what I expect. And if you don't meet those expectations, then this isn't a good fit for us.
Right, right, right. So, when you say expectations, though, is it more to do with like expecting them to do something, or just things that you value within your own life, that if they also value that, then it's a match?
Both. So like for me, communication is super, super important. So like if you're going to text me once a day, like that's not going to work. So but I won't say it like that. I'll just say, hey, consistent communication looks like this to me. And that really makes me feel connected. It makes me happy. It makes me feel excited. If that's not the communication style that you enjoy or that you think that you could like give, then this probably isn't going to work.
Right, right.
And
Yeah, and speaking about like communication, like there are some relationships where they're monogamous, they're in a
Mhm.
monogamous relationship, but along the line there has been infidelity by one partner. So they now are carrying around a sense of guilt about what they have done, but they're afraid to communicate what has happened with their partner. Obviously, to not destroy the relationship, this is what they're afraid of. So, but they don't want to sit with this guilt and continue with the relationship, like living this type of lie. So,
Yeah.
how can they communicate this infidelity that has happened to their partner in a way that their partner can be open to talk with them without it being like overly dramatic, if possible?
Yeah. Gosh, this is a really contentious question. And it's honestly debated within the mental health and relationship field because there are some professionals who will say it's not about the other person knowing, it's about you not wanting to feel guilty anymore. And so you unburdening has nothing to do with sharing your truth with them. It has to do with you feeling better about yourself. And so is there another way that you can feel better about yourself while still preserving the relationship? So that's one school of thought. The other school of thought is honesty is absolutely doesn't matter if even if it kills the relationship, you have to tell the truth. And so I don't really fall into either category. It really, for me, when I'm working with clients or even talking with friends, a lot of it has to do with what they value. And
Mm.
so, and the motivation for why would you tell them? Like what good would come of this? And what do you think could this make your relationship stronger? Are you in a place where this is like a complete deal breaker? I've seen relationships end over really stupid things like I got really drunk. I like made out with somebody. It wasn't even like sex. It was just like I just made out with somebody, but I wanted to tell you. And some people would be like, okay, who cares? And I've seen couples totally like divorce because of a situation like that. And so I think if you are really struggling with the guilt, because I want to answer your question, I would look at what am I feeling guilty about? Am I feeling guilty because I violated my partner's trust, because I did something I didn't think I was supposed to do? And then what good do I anticipate coming from this situation? And is this about me feeling better?
Right, right, right. So would you say that not mentioning anything at all is also a viable option?
I think it can be a viable option. Yes. I think that there are some things that um, are just not that relevant. And I know that I hate saying that, but because I believe in honesty and like so, so much. But sometimes there are just things that your partner is not in a place where they can receive. And that doesn't mean that you don't tell them ever, but it might be like, hey, I need to really consider why I'm acting in this way. So like let's take infidelity for example. Like if I am consistently stepping out on my partner, like that's a conversation that needs to happen. If I got drunk one night and think that I engaged in some inappropriate behavior with somebody else and like I feel really guilty and bad, like I don't see that as necessarily being important to have to communicate to your partner because it could do a lot more harm than good and it requires a lot more rebuilding. I think that can be like a come to Jesus moment for the individual and be like, I need to get my crap together and really focus on being more in integrity with my actions.
Mm. Yeah, I guess it comes down to the level of communication with the couple, how open they are with each other in terms of communication and how much trust there is within that relationship as to whatever is communicated, what does it mean for us? Like how much understanding there are. So that would vary with different couples. That's that's what I would say on that. But I speak to a lot of different women, and a lot of
Mhm.
issues that they have about relationships is anxiety towards relationships and within relationships. What would you say were some of the causes of anxiety within relationships, and how can what you do help with that type of thing?
Oh, the first thing that popped into mind is fear of abandonment. Like so much of anxiety in females that I see, a lot of it is rooted in that fear of abandonment, that fear of I'm not going to be accepted. Oh gosh, there's so many layers to this. This fear, especially women of, childbearing age who want to have kids. This fear of is my biological clock going to run out? Am I going to find somebody? Am I going to be able to be a mom? Just these societal pressures that are put on women. Good Lord, of course they're anxious, like it's overwhelming. But yeah, absolutely. I would say the fear of abandonment is huge for the anxiety prevalence.
Right, right. And what ways would they be able to deal with this like fear of abandonment and that's causing them anxiety?
I'm a big fan of inner child work. And so that's one of the things that I do with my clients is help them to go back and see where that fear originated from. A lot of it has to do with your relationship with your dad, unfortunately, for good or bad. And so navigating what that was like and really healing that relationship, and starting to develop a secure attachment with yourself so that you know that no matter who comes or goes, like I'm going to be okay.
Mm,
Like my safety and my security is not based in a marital status or a relationship status. Like regardless of who comes in and out of my life, like I've got my own back.
right, right. So essentially practicing self-love and like understanding that like you are the person that's going to be in a relationship with you for life before
Yes,
anybody else. Yeah,
absolutely.
excellent, excellent, excellent. Yeah, so like a lot of people like they come into a new relationship and they start to feel butterflies and they enjoy the
Mhm.
chemistry that's going on in this brand new relationship to the point that they want to really immerse themselves in this relationship. But
Mhm.
some people, upon immersing themselves in this new relationship, they start to lose their sense of self.
Yeah.
So how can they immerse themselves in a new relationship without not necessarily losing their sense of self in the process?
Yeah, that's a really great observation. And it's normal, right? Like our brains are designed to, like when I used to be a sexuality educator before I became a sex therapist. And one of the things I would tell people of all ages was that our bodies want to get pregnant. Our bodies want to perpetuate our DNA, even if we're 17 or we're, whatever, like our brains are like, ooh, I want to make more of my DNA and pass that on. And the same goes for when we are grown adults in a relationship. Like our brain wants us to, commingle and mix and have wonderful things result in that. And so really trying to keep time for yourself, it's a big thing is I don't need to be available to this new person all of the time. Like I still needed to maintain that sense of relationship with myself. So, one of the things I see with single people is that they're like, well, I'm by myself all the time. So like, who cares? Like, I want to spend all my free time now with, this gorgeous person and they make me so happy. And I really encourage them to not forget what about themselves makes themselves happy and
Mm.
to take intentional time every day where they're reconnecting with who they are, just like they would a kid or a best friend, somebody that they really love and adore, and really checking in with, like, okay, like, how am I feeling today? Like, what am I feeling, stressed about work? Not looking to neglect the other areas of their life just because they're starting, their thoughts are now consumed with this new love interest.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Excellent. So like, like before dating apps now, like the only way we'd meet people was like in person in real life. But dating apps become very popular. But let me ask you
Yeah.
this, like if you was approached by a man at an event, for let's say,
Hmm.
and he let you know that he was interested in you,
Okay.
versus if a man on a dating app sent you a message letting you know that he was interested in you,
Hmm.
which one has is more impactful to you, and which one is more memorable to you?
Oh, hands down in person.
Right.
Hands down. Absolutely. Like, because it is so easy to hide behind a screen. And that to me does not require vulnerability. I find vulnerability really, really sexy. So if a guy wants to come up to me and tell me, like, hey, like, dude, like, you're awesome, or like, you're beautiful, or like, I would love to take you out for coffee, that shows me that he is confident, which is sexy, because I could absolutely reject him publicly, which is, scary for a lot of people, versus like what, like not answering on my phone or whatever, or just telling him just no. You don't have to receive somebody's immediate feedback when you are doing stuff online. But yeah, absolutely. I even remember some guys who were charming and creative, and I either was still monogamous or I wasn't in a place where I was like open to more partners, come up and like show interest in me. And that made me feel so good. And I respected them for their boldness, even though I wasn't interested in them. And that like left an impression on me.
Right. Yeah, 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 yeah. And for people that like they are fed up with dating apps and they would like to meet people in person, but they're not sure like where to go. They don't know like whether to go to the bar, the club. They want to meet someone in an authentic and genuine way. What kind of ways or places do you think they can go to actually meet people in an authentic and genuine way?
Okay, so one of the first things that I will say to this is I want you to think about how you can show up and add value to other people's lives. So let's say you go to the same coffee shop every morning on your way to work. Like you are probably running into hundreds, let's say even 20 people, maybe 20 people. Give somebody a compliment. Open the door for somebody. Like say something or start a conversation. Like there are so many ways that you can connect with other humans in a really genuine way. And when you start to show up in the giving mode instead of what can I get out of this mode, it changes the energy and makes you so much more attractive. So I just wanted to start with that, like asking how can I add value in my current life the way that it is, whether that's at the office, at a coffee shop, the waiter at a restaurant, like there's so many different ways you can do that. And then start to do things that make you happy. So, like maybe you really enjoy running, join a running club. Maybe you really are into gardening, like go to the community center or like go to the hardware store and like talk to other gardeners or join like a Reddit for gardening lovers or whatever. Like but when I totally see the difference between men because I don't date women, so I don't know how women act. But when men are in a hunting mode, it is not attractive. It just sends off this like desperate energy. But when they are in hey, I'm just like here for like to meet new people, to engage, to share experiences, and they offer value in terms of their opinion, their helpfulness, their kindness, like that's hot.
Yeah, so essentially living your life and meeting people
Yes.
along the way of your general lifestyle and things like that. Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But people have, gosh, I could talk about, I know we're pressed for time. So I bet I could talk about my criticism of people and dating apps. And I really think a lot of it has to do with that we see people as disposable. And dating apps really perpetuates that viewpoint.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, like, we speak to people all the time. You as a therapist, you speak to different people all the time. And me as a coach, I speak to different people all the time. And we learn different things from people that we speak to. What would you say were some of the biggest things that you've learned from the people that you've spoken to?
Oh, in terms of dating or what do
Dating
you
and
mean?
relationships, yeah.
Oh gosh. We just all really want to be loved. Like, I think that's what it comes down to. And we don't always do it in the best of way in trying to obtain that love. But so many of us are really wounded. And we think that, presenting ourselves in a certain way that we think other people will want, like the more genuine you are, the more in touch you are with yourself, the more emotionally aware. like the better those people do because they just put out this magnetic energy and there's no pretense.
Right, right. Excellent, excellent. Well, Courtney, like it's been excellent speaking with you. Thank you so much for coming on. Where
Thank
can
you.
people find out more about you, find out more about you, and essentially find you?
So I'm on social media at Courtney Boyer Coaching. I think I'm not on Twitter or X or whatever, but all the other platforms, especially Instagram. I love getting messages from people when they hear me on podcasts. It makes me really happy. My website is CourtneyBoyerCoaching.com. And then my book, you can get it all major retailers online. It's called Not Tonight, Honey.
Excellent, excellent. And for the viewers, all of that information will be in the description so you can get in touch with Courtney. Once again, Courtney, thank you so much for coming on. Any final words that you'd like to say before we end the session?
I just like you are so worthy and deserving of pleasure. Like that, I hope you really believe that. And I hope that you can create a more pleasure-filled life.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Courtney.
You're welcome.